The following video is not made for kids. Viewer discretion is advised. Hello to my subscribers, this is the TFangy coming to you with what will hopefully be a quick and successful review, and today we're going to be taking a look at what might possibly now be the rarest Transformers action figure in my collection, and it is the Transformers Botcon 2010 exclusive Pyro action figure, or Autobot Spark as Hasbro tried to rename him. So yeah, for those of you who don't know who this guy is, Pyro was one of the Transformers characters who was released right in between in the transition from the Transformers Generation 1 to the Generation 2 franchise. And because he was released literally right when Generation 1 transitioned to Generation 2, Pyro is recognized as being more of a Transformers Generation 2 character than a Generation 1 character, which is why all of the Autobot logos he has painted on him are the G2 Autobot logo, and unlike the Generation 1 Autobot logo, which is modeled after Generation 1 Prowl's face sculpt, the Generation 2 Autobot logo is modeled after G1 Optimus Prime's face sculpt. So yeah, that's pretty neat there. I got Pyro off of eBay a couple of months ago for what I felt was a decent price considering how rare of a figure he is. And I read on the Transformers Wikipedia that Pyro arguably has the most paint apps out of any Transformers action figure released at Botcon. On almost all of the decals on here and highlights that he has are paint. All the yellow on him is paint. And his Autobot logos are paint. He's got painted parts on the grill, the headlights, his utility belt there at his waist, the yellow and black stripes. On here, his Autobot logos is all paint. The parts of him that are made of plastic are the black parts on his thighs, and then the blue parts on his head, his hands, his cannon, and his feet are made of blue plastic, and his shoulder joints are made out of blue plastic. And then, of course, the rest of him is made out of. It was supposed to be this red plastic, but because it turned out to be such a bright shade of red, it's actually a hot pink color. I don't know what shade of pink you would call that, but yeah, Pyro, his original Generation 2 action figure was red. And one thing to note about this version of Pyro is that Hasbro didn't go the extra mile and designed a new head sculpt for him. They just reused the exact same head that was used on the original version of this mold, which was the Transformers Universe Classics 25th Anniversary Inferno figure. And that's upset a lot of Botcon on attendees back in 2010 when Pyro was revealed, because it would have been cool if he had a head sculpt that was more accurate to his original head, which had instead of having a full face, it had a mouth plate on it. And one of the versions of this mold, which is the mostly blue Generations GDO Hotspot figure, which I do have, but unfortunately I couldn't find it to bring out for this review, but that head sculpt is much more accurate to Pyro's original head sculpt here. He does have light piping, but it's very piping, but it only works if you hold a bright light up behind it. But regardless, I do enjoy having this figure in my collection. So far, the word from Hasbro and Takara Tomy is that Pyro is one of the Transformers characters that's not on their list of characters that are being released anytime soon, so that was my main motivation to getting this figure. One thing about this figure that's not original is the little spring-loaded missile here. This is the original version that came with the 25th Anniversary Inferno figure. The missile that was originally given to Pyro was made out of clear red plastic, but the missile was missing on this copy, so I figured getting it didn't matter what color the missile was as long as I had one, so I was able to find one on eBay, which I'm glad for. But yeah, that's pretty much it. For articulation, his head is on a ball joint, but it's part of a spring activation, so it does tend to wobble around a bit. The arms can rotate at the shoulder, but it's on a ratchet joint, so it's not a swivel joint. That's why the arms are managed to stay locked in place. The arms can go out, inward and outward, a swivel joint to the bicep. Hinged elbow, although on this arm you have to move the shoulder paneling out of the way due to the cannon. And in wrist swivels, which are nice because the figure doesn't need you to rotate the hands to transform correctly into alt mode. No waist articulation, but it's kind of hard to show, but if you turn the figure around, here's what he looks like on the back. The leg joints are held on these hinge joints, so you can get the figure into a sprawl-legged position if you want, or have the legs standing ending straight upwards. That's a nice joint there that you don't see, that onward of inward and outward hip joints. Swivel joint in the upper part of the hip. It's not actually at the thigh joint itself. Hinge knees, which are sculpted out so it moves right here and doesn't look like it's broken. So that's nice. You don't see that often. There is a swivel joint also at the knee, but it's kind of stiff, and it's primarily a transformation joint. The feet can go upward and downward. They can bend at the ankle, but it's hindered lightly due to the limited movement. But yeah, fairly decent amount of articulation for a Voyager-class Transformers figure that was originally released back in 2009. And yes, that's pretty much it for Pyro. One thing that the original figure of Pyro is famous for is that the parts here on the Botcon figure that are yellow, which are his arms and his... I call it a utility belt. It's supposed to be his waist piece, but on the original Pyro action figure, these parts were made out of gold plastic. And so it's nice that here on the Botcon figure that it's just yellow paint. And it's not even gold paint. And the original Pyro figure, because the robot mode pelvis was made out of gold plastic, infamously, almost every action figure copy of the original action figure of Pyro that's found out there looks like it's been sliced in half because the robot mode pelvis succumbed to gold plastic syndrome. So, this, I believe, the Botcon figure here I believe it's the only action figure of Pyro that you'll find fully intact, because instead of gold plastic, his yellow parts are made from yellow paint. But I really do hope we get an official mass retail released figure of Pyro someday, even if he's released under the trademark name Hasbro gave him of Autobot Spark. But I prefer the name that he's more famous for of Pyro, which is why it's the title of the video. One thing to know is that he does have 2 more additional G2 Autobot logos here on the backs of his shoulders. Those become the sides of his alt mode when we get him transformed. And for those of you who aren't aware of this mold, or you've never seen it before and you don't have any idea who Pyro is, he transforms into a fire truck. I probably gave it, for those of you who are familiar with Inferno, I gave it away when I said that he was a repaint of Inferno. The original Pyro action figure was an airport emergency fire truck, somewhat similar to Dark of the Moon Sentinel Prime, but since Pyro came out back in 1991 and Dark of the Moon Sentinel Prime came out 20 years later, Pyro technically came first. So, the type of fire truck that this mold transforms to is an inner city fire truck, not one you'd see at an airport, but I think it works for Pyro regardless. The main gripe I have is the same one other collectors have, where I honestly wish Hasbro would have gone the extra mile and designed a new head sculpt for him instead of just using the Inferno head sculpt again. But I guess back in 2010, and Hasbro decided to put all the budget into all the paint detailing that Pyro has about him, so the new head sculpt was not even an option. And because this is one thing that makes this figure special is that this has become the first and currently only figure of Pyro that I have in my Transformers collection, so just for a special size comparison with a more recently released Voyager-class Transformers action figure that also turns into a fire truck, here is Botcon 2010 Pyro next to Legacy United animated Optimus Prime. So here you can see the two, what an average Voyager class-sized figure was in 2009 compared to 2024. They are somewhat similar, but in terms of overall weight, they have almost the same amount of heft to them, and Pyro is much bulkier, not just with the robot mode kibble hanging off his arms and shoulders, but he's half a head taller than animated Optimus Prime is. And even if with the inclusion of his axe weapon, Pyro is still slightly bigger since he has his cannon, and of course as I said, the missile is spring activated, so there you go. That's the power of a spring-activated missile. I honestly don't know why Hasbro can't release spring-activated missiles for Transformers action figures aimed at older adult collectors, and then just have a disclaimer saying that it's a spring-loaded missile. People under a certain age shouldn't buy it, but I guess people would ignore it, and it's easier to obey safety laws by not having it included at all. But yeah, that's an example of a bygone era of spring-loaded missiles being included with Transformers action figures. I actually don't know of I can't even remember what the last Transformers action figure that actually could fire a missile was that was released. There's been none in the Legacy line so far that I'm aware of, but yeah, that was one fun thing to have with Transformers action figures back in the 2000s was spring-activated missiles. And so that's pretty much it. Pyro's not really much of a well-known character. He was one fleshed out in the G2 comic books as being one of the main heroic members of the Autobots. And I guess you could argue Pyro was almost like third in command to the Autobots after Optimus Prime and Ultra Magnus. But to my knowledge, he hasn't really appeared in any of the more modern Transformers comic books. And again, one of the main reasons I got his Botcon figure is that Hasbro and Takara Tomy currently have no plans whatsoever on giving Pyro a modern-day action figure, but hopefully that will change. But yeah, that is basically all the 101 information on Pyro, so let's get him transformed into his alt mode and wrap up the review. Alright, and so here is Pyro transformed into his alt mode of a fire truck. And if you're wondering why does he have this elaborate yellow and black hazard tiger stripe caution striping on his back, believe it or not, the original Pyro action figure had virtually the same paint job. The main difference between this one and the original G2 Pyro figure is that Pyro could actually split in half, and the second half of his vehicle mode became a missile launcher that actually activated spring-loaded missiles, which I think is one of the reasons why they use the Inferno mode for Pyro as a reference to the original figure also having a spring-loaded missile. But again, just like his robot mode Pelvis, Pyro's missile launcher was made entirely out of gold plastic, so good luck finding that thing fully intact in one piece. And unlike other Transformers figures that suffered from gold plastic syndrome, such as those released during Transformers Beast Wars, to my knowledge, his original figure has never been repainted into another Transformers figure, so unlike other Transformers figures such as Beast Wars, Transmetal Megatron, or Beast Machine's Snarl, or even a Generation 1 figure that suffered from gold plastic syndrome, the G1 version of Quick Strike, which was repainted more than once into other Transformers figures made out of different colored plastic. The original figure of Pyro was never used again. And so, basically, Pyro is one of those diamond in the rough of Holy Grail Transformers action figures, where if you find a figure of him, then you should give thanks and be extremely grateful that you found one, because not counting figures that release as exclusives, such as the Botcon figure here that this video review is about, the original G2 figure is the only one of Pyro that's released out there. Technically, if you count his original G1 release, which is even rarer than the G2 released figure, then there's technically 2 releases of the original Pyro figure, but no modern figures. I saw a photo a couple of years ago where a third-party company was going to try and do a third-party version of Pyro, but Pyro with the gold parts again, replaced with yellow plastic. But I don't know if it ever went through or not, since I've never seen any video reviews of it on YouTube. But yeah, the Botcon figure, for being a repaint of the Universe Classics 25th Anniversary Inferno, it does a fairly decent job. The wheels are held in place with metal pins, and it rolls fairly well, even on the wood surface of my review tray here. Here it's really nice. Here he is on the other side. In vehicle mode, he's virtually identical on both sides. He's got the same number on both sides. 27641 is his fire truck number. I don't know if there's any significance into that number. I don't know how many copies of Pyro were made for Botcon 2010. I think it was only several hundred, maybe close to 1,000. So yeah, he's a extremely rare figure here. And there's the G2 logos that were on the back of his robot mode shoulders. They end up here on the top of his sides, roofs of his fire truck mode. And again, the G2 Autobot logo is it's modeled after G1 Optimus Prime's head sculpt, unlike the G1 Autobot logo, which is the more well-known version of the logo, which was modeled after G1 Prowl's head sculpt. Generation 2, the Transformers Generation 2 characters, the ones that have been released at retail in more recent years, somewhat disappointingly, the G2 Autobot characters modern figures of them that have been released, such as the Legacy G2 Laser Optimus Prime figure that was released back in 2022. G2 Autobot figures tend to have the G1 Autobot logo, but somewhat ironically, the G2 Decepticons have the G2 Decepticon logo. So having a G2 Autobot have the proper original Generation 2 Autobot logo based off of Optimus Prime's face, it's a rare treat in of itself. And there's the same one he had on his robot mode chest. It's on the windshield of his fire truck mode. And yeah, pretty bright, vibrant color scheme even for an airport fire truck with the yellow hazard stripes. Typically, black and yellow hazard stripes tend to be the same size, and so the hazard striping on Pyro, I've always looked at it as being like more yellow tiger striping, even though the lines are straight off. I do love that his robot mode arm tries to blend in with the hazard striping here on the back to try and mimic his original figure. The spring missile gimmick works, and the reason why it's this shade of light blue plastic on the original Inferno figure is because it was designed to mimic water. I don't know why they... The best guess I can give to why the actual missile that Pyro originally came with was made out of clear red plastic was because it was supposed to be a flamethrower instead of a hose cannon. Overall, I'm really thrilled with this figure and having it in my collection. And of course, for one last size comparison, here he is next to Legacy United Animated Universe Optimus Prime. In robot mode, Pyro was only slightly bulkier, but here in alt mode, with how they transform, with animated Optimus Prime becoming more compressed, there's no contest. This is the larger of the two figures in alt mode. This is definitely a much larger fire truck than this version. And one thing I've always liked about the 25th anniversary Inferno mold is that, unlike more modern Transformers figures that have fire trucks for alt modes, this one, even though it's obviously an action figure of a fire truck instead of a real one, it's much more of a this mold is much more of a robot in disguise than compared to more recent figures such as Legacy United Animated Optimus Prime. I'm speechless at how fantastic this figure looks in both robot mode and vehicle mode. So, if you happen to find a Botcon Pyro, you are going to pay a hefty price for him since he was a convention exclusive action figure that was a promotional item for convention attendees, and he wasn't meant to be released at mass retail. The average price I've seen him going for on eBay is $200+ due to the fact that he was sold in a box set that contained up to 5 Transformers action figures. So he's not only rare, but if you want to find him brand new, he's going to be sold in a box set. So again, as I said earlier in the video, Pyro is one of the crown jewel Transformers action figures. So for the proverbial question at the end of the review, do I recommend getting this figure and adding it to your Transformers collection? I only recommend getting the Botcon 2010 Pyro figure if you're an absolute fan of the Universe Classics Inferno mold, and if you are a fan of Transformers Generation 2, and if you are a fan of Transformers action figures that were complete repaints sold exclusively at the official Transformers convention Botcon. If you aren't a fan of any of those three, or if you aren't a fan of all three of them together, then this figure is definitely an easy pass due to how rare of a figure it is and how expensive it goes, a price tag it'll fetch. But hopefully Hasbro and Takara Tomy will decide to have Pyro put on the list of Transformers characters in need of a new figure in the Transformers Legacy line someday in the very near future. So thank you guys all so much for watching. This has been the TFN Geek. This has been my review of the Transformers Botcon 2010 exclusive Autobot Pyro, aka Autobot Spark review. Thank you guys all so much for watching, and until next time, you guys remember to stay safe, stay healthy, transform and roll out. Goodbye, everyone.